You are all set, Chief.
Good. Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. So I think in light of our limited numbers, we'll make this a little more interactive. So, you know, if you have a question on anything, feel free to ask, and we can have some back and forth, which is always good. But starting with the agenda, just to give you an update on the staffing. So right now we have 2 current openings for police officer. So we have 2 vacancies right now, and we're going to have an additional vacancy with a retirement in January. So we'll be down 3 officers within the next 4 to 6 weeks. We're in the middle of a testing process now for both certified officers and entry level. Certified officers being officers from other police departments that are interested in coming to Newington. It's always nice though for me to try to get a mix. It's good to get some certified officers, but it's also good to get some entry level officers that haven't worked in another department before. They're starting fresh, they're starting new with Newington PD. So it's nice to have that balance in that mix. So hopefully when the testing is done, we'll have some good recruits, but I'll certainly keep you updated on that. And, you know, there's always the talk of, you know, the accountability bill scaring officers, I shouldn't say scaring, but causing concern with officers and leaving the police department. I can tell you these 3 vacancies have absolutely nothing to do with that. Actually, one officer is leaving Newington and going to another police department. And then there is another officer that is retiring under a disability on the job injury. And then another vacancy is a result of an officer retiring and actually going to state service. So those are the vacancies that we currently have now. As far as other staffing issues, we've, sorry to say, we've had 1 officer that has tested positive for COVID. And, you know, with the contract tracing affected 3 other officers for a total of 4. So we had 4 officers out on quarantine for 14 days. Those officers have since returned to duty. They're back to full duty. But just kind of goes to show you that, you know, you have 1 infection, how it can, you know, spread. And you know, just looking at some of the numbers today in Newington, we've had almost 1,000 people that have tested positive for COVID in town, and there's been like 72 deaths. So I think we're up now, the state's up to like 1,200 hospitalizations. So it's really, it's surging. It's a huge concern. So we here at the PD, and I know the town manager has done the same thing under his direction, is, you know, limited our staffing, our exposure, and it hasn't affected our services, but we're ever mindful of the surge in COVID and how to protect our folks. So, you know, all in all, with 1 exposure or 1 testing positive, we've done pretty well so far, but we still got to stay on our game and take the necessary precautions to protect our people. Our PPE, our stock is very good. We're not short, so we have the personal protective equipment to keep our folks safe. So all in all, we're doing pretty good in that regard.
Chief, just so you know, Todd Russell's trying to come in, but he's having trouble connecting. I'll see if I can help.
Calls for service. I'll give you an update on that. So I'll start with the arrest. So our arrests are down 20%. So in 2018.
Chief, can I just go back to the staffing?
Sure. I'm sorry, Gail, I can't hear you.
You're lagging. Oh, okay. I think there's a delay, but regarding the staffing, regarding the staffing and the COVID, I know last spring, when COVID first started, you indicated officers, not often, but sometimes they were getting, when they tried to make arrests or stops, some of the individuals were, I don't know, coughing and spitting or whatever deliberately. Is that still occurring, do you know, or?
No, we haven't seen that, fortunately. We haven't seen that lately. And in fact, it's something that is occurring over in court for arraignments. They actually put out an advisement over in court about a similar situation. But I can tell you in the beginning, there was a few instances, but we haven't seen that as of late.
Okay, that's good to hear. Thank you.
So again, back to the call service. Our arrests are down in a lot. It has to do with COVID. We're trying to not bring people into the police department, and especially house them in our cell block area. So we're down in arrest 20%. So as far as crime, I'm sorry to say that our crime levels are spiking. And in some ways, pretty significantly. I mean, I've been doing this job 35 years now, and some of it has spiked so much, it's beyond what I've ever seen. So our burglaries are up 37%. Domestics, which, there was something on the news about the spike in domestic violence due to COVID. Our statistics are up 14%. Our people in crisis is up 18%. Larcenies, those are your shopliftings, up 13%. Our car breaks are up 75%. Noise complaints, you could probably contribute to COVID. People are cooped up. They're up 49%. Recovered stolen motor vehicles are up 142%. Stolen motor vehicles are up 90%. And I'll talk a little bit more on that with the agenda item. Suspicious report up 30%. People are staying home. They're seeing things, and to their credit, they're calling them in. So I think a lot of that has to do with people are staying home. They're in their neighborhoods watching, and when they see something out of place, they're calling the police, which is a good thing. So that's pretty much where we are with statistics. Some of them, like I said, they're probably driven by COVID. The noise complaints, customer disputes, domestic violence, things of that nature. But the car breaks and the stolen cars are pretty concerning. And I wouldn't say that is solely attributed to COVID. I think there's a lot of other factors that are coming into play that are driving up those numbers. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, so we'll get right into the stolen vehicles. And Gail's here from the town council, and I had appeared before the town council to talk about this problem. It's a big problem, and as we know, this isn't unique to Newington. This is occurring all over the state, and the spike are pretty identical to a lot of other communities in Connecticut that are seeing the same thing. And like I said, I've never seen a spike in car breaks and stolen cars like this in all my years as a police officer. They're pretty dramatic. And what's really concerning now is you're starting to see an escalation. It isn't just going into the car, taking out valuables or stealing the car. You're seeing they're going into open garages. There's two that I'm aware of where cars are actually stolen with children in the car. it's occurring during the daytime hours. Now, when the cold weather, people are warming up their cars, they're leaving them unattended, and they're stealing the cars during the early morning hours, and even during the afternoon. We had one recently that was like 12:30 during the day. We had 2 incidents where a firearm was displayed. Homeowner came out, confronted the individuals attempting to steal the car, and they were threatened with a firearm. And they had one the other night in Manchester where they actually shot at the car. So, very concerning. And then we recently had another one where captured on somebody's home surveillance system was actually somebody during the middle of the night peering through a window into the house. So we're starting to see an escalation there. And, we've done as much as we possibly can. We're putting officers in the neighborhoods, and, they're finding doors open. And we just developed a leaflet now that we're going to leave on people's doors when, an interior light of a car is found on, or a garage door is up. We make contact with the homeowners just to find out if anything occurred, but we actually have leaflets that we're going to be leaving on people's doors. If we see something out of place that doesn't rise to the level of knocking on the door at 2:00 in the morning, at least we'll give them some sort of notification so they're aware of what's going on, so they can take corrective action. So we're going to be doing that. But the officers are they're in the neighborhoods. They're coming across these suspicious cars, stolen cars, and they're making attempts to stop them, and they flee, and they know that you're not going to chase them. So they use that against us, knowing that all they got to do is get to the car and take off, and they're pretty much home free because we're not going to chase them. And a lot of these offenders are juveniles and young adults, and they're brazen. They have no fear of the police. They drive recklessly. They put other folks at risk. So it's a huge problem, and we got to try to find another way. Just patrolling those areas, you basically just it's like you just shoo them out of the neighborhood. The officers see them, they attempt to stop them, they take off, and they flee out of town only to go into another town. And there's been a couple of major ATM burglaries that have occurred around Newington, where the officers actually saw that suspect vehicle in Newington and attempted to stop them, and they fled. So it's like a reoccurring theme. The officer sees the vehicle, tries to stop it, they flee, and then it's pretty much over for them to move on to another location and commit a crime. There's no deterrence there. So, like I said, there's a lot of factors that are working against us. As much as we put our efforts in trying to curtail it, it's very frustrating. It's frustrating for me as a chief, and I know it's equally frustrating for the officers to be in a position where they want to make an apprehension and they just can't do it. So, you got to try to find a way to get them away from the car. If they're out of the car and they can't make it back to the car, there's a foot chase, you got a better chance of apprehending them as opposed to them getting in the car. Well, I can tell you, if a weapon's involved, if somebody is threatened with a weapon, fires the weapon, then that's an entirely different scenario. I don't have a problem at that threat level based on the violence and the threat of violence for the officers to pursue. But again, that's another decision. If a pursuit gets so dangerous, then officers always have that discretion to not engage in the pursuit, break off the pursuit, and that goes along with the sergeant's responsibility to monitor it as well. So, does anybody have any questions related to that?
Has there been any discussion about trying to put together like community watch groups? I know there are some that are within town, certain neighborhoods that have that, like a neighborhood watch. Has there been any talk like with maybe trying to advocate for that or get people to, like a program for training or, you know, any of that?
I mean, that's a good question. That's come up before and we've tried. There just doesn't seem to be a lot of interest there anymore, like there once was.
Yeah.
You know, Jamie DeStimone, the CSO, I mean, there's a few.
Right.
But, you know, it's something that she would put together.
Okay.
But when you talk about, you know, the community watch groups, it's them, you know, that they take that initiative. And,
Right.
you know, unfortunately, there just doesn't seem to be like a lot of interest in that anymore, like there once was. I mean, I can remember back in the 80s, you know, late 80s, early 90s, they were all over town.
Exactly. Yeah.
And they, you know, those signs were all over town too. And it just, for some reason, just kind of fell by the wayside. People, you know, volunteerism in general is down.
Yeah.
You know, there's a great book out there called Bowling Alone. And it talks about, you know, people not volunteering their time in civic groups and things of that nature. It's just, we all lead very active, hectic lives, you know, with work and our kids, and people don't have a lot of extra time anymore. So, but, you know, it's something that we would advocate for, and we would certainly help anybody that would be interested in doing that.
And you would just reach out to Officer DeSimone?
Yeah. Just call the PD and she'll, you know, if it's something that you're interested in, she would certainly, you know, get you started and help you coordinate it. You know, that's why she's there.
Okay.
Does anybody have any questions related to that? I know it's the town council is very concerned about it, and they're putting a letter together with the hopes of gathering some additional support from some of the other adjoining towns. So, you know, so hopefully goes to the Capitol and they can look at this from another perspective and hopefully come up with some strategies.
Could it possibly be something like, I know with the off-road vehicles, like the ATVs, there was like the regional kind of task force. Is that the kind of idea that you guys are?
Yeah, Hartford has one. They have a regional one.
Okay.
So.
I apologize for being so late. I had some technology issues.
Oh, that's okay. Todd, we're up to the juvenile detention procedures. Do you have any questions about what I know you weren't here, but do you have any questions about anything that we haven't covered? I'm sorry, that we covered?
I mean, the juvenile detention procedures, I wouldn't want to make you go back over the whole thing.
No, actually, that's where I'm starting at now. So your timing is very good.
Okay.
So I put that on here because it kind of works part and parcel with the car breaks and the stolen cars, just because those crimes are mostly committed by juveniles and young adults. And I wanted to explain the juvenile detention procedure. And, you know, it's changed over the years. And there was a significant change back in January of 2017 for detention. Essentially now, officers need a taken to custody order signed by a judge to be able to bring a juvenile to detention. And back in 2017, the only way you could place a juvenile into detention was those that pose a risk to public safety or where there was a need to hold a juvenile in order to ensure the juvenile's appearance before the court, as demonstrated by the juvenile's previous failure to respond to the court process, or there's a need to hold a juvenile for another jurisdiction. Those were the only stipulations when you could put a juvenile in detention. The fact that the juvenile would run away, a strong probability to commit additional crimes were not considered. And, you know, there's a case that we had that I talk about frequently where we had a juvenile that was arrested, was actually arrested for possession of marijuana, but was in town and was here to steal cars and to break into cars. And we got in a foot chase with him. The officer apprehended him, and we couldn't link him to the stolen cars or the car break. So the only thing we had was the marijuana arrest. And the kid was beyond the control of his parents. He was in the custody of a state agency. And basically that state agency couldn't control him. So he was placing himself in a situation, in an environment that really posed a significant risk to him, you know, by his activities and where he was going at night. And we couldn't place him in detention under those rules. So we had to release him back to the state agency, who basically said that we don't have any control of him. He's probably going to run away again. And in fact, he did. After we returned him to that state agency, he ran away. And then a few days later was found in Hartford, was shot and killed, the victim of a murder. So here's a kid that was clearly beyond the control of anyone. And my position is, you know, there are cases where, yeah, it doesn't meet this criteria, but, you know, kids are putting themselves in a situation and in an environment where they're putting themselves at risk. And it's our duty and responsibility to really protect them from themselves. And, you know, when this law changed, it doesn't do that. It doesn't provide us as the caretakers to put them, you know, if you don't want to put them in detention, put them in another secure facility where, number one, they can get the services that they need, because in my opinion, there's really not a lot being done for kids right now in that regard to protect them from themselves. And then back in 2018, the law changed again, made it even more restrictive to put juveniles into detention. And it basically now, unless you can find a less, so basically the way it reads, a probable cause to believe that the level of risk that the child poses to public safety, if released to the community prior to a court hearing or disposition, cannot be managed in a less restrictive setting. Well, what does that mean? I've been doing this job for 35 years and I can read this and I have no idea what that means. What's a less restrictive setting? I mean, I don't know what that means. I don't know how to apply it. It's confusing. And when there's confusion, there's indecisiveness. And so I'm just trying to demonstrate to you how difficult it is. So when you make an apprehension, chances are these juveniles are not going to be put in detention or any other facility to control them or to protect them from themselves. And they're going to be right back out on the street doing the exact same thing again. And Hartford had one a few weeks back where they arrested a juvenile, released them, and 4 hours later, they arrested them again for doing the same thing, stealing another car. And it just goes on and on and on and on. And it just doesn't seem like there's any end in sight. And I get the intention of the lawmakers at the Capitol. You know, they want to limit, you know, juveniles being put in detention to try to protect them from growing up in in an environment where they're going to commit other crimes or how it affects them emotionally. But there are cases where, they're beyond everybody's control, and you have to, for their own self-protection and for public safety, put them in an environment or facility that protects themselves and the public. And I really don't see that happening right now. But again, I can also say I understand what their intent is. So there has to be a way, and it's probably going to take a lot of money, because I really don't think there's a lot being spent on services for these juveniles. And it's going to take a whole lot of money and a whole lot of effort. And when you consider, 14, 15, 16-year-old, 17-year-old kids, out at 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, who's watching them? Nobody is. And they have basically free reign. So if they're having free reign, and I'll go back to my, college days and criminology. One of the things that I learned was that there's 2 factors that really contribute to juvenile delinquency. Number 1 is a lack of parental control, lack of parental guidance. In this situation, there is none. And then the second factor is associating with deviant peers. That's what's going on. So I think you got to try to find a way here. And like I said, it's probably going to take a lot of money that the state doesn't have. But, if we don't find a way, this is going to continue to happen, and there's going to be more tragic results. It's just a matter of time before something happens where somebody's threatened in a garage, or it escalates into a tragedy. And, they're operating these vehicles recklessly, putting us all at risk. And it's becoming more and more frequent. And I can tell you, like we had one yesterday. It just seems like there's 3, 4 a week now for us, where officers go to make a stop and the car just takes off. And we had a larceny of some precious metals today, early this morning. The officers followed up on it, and it was a black pickup truck. And the officers learned that it was at a location in Hartford. Newington officer went over there to talk to him, and as soon as they saw the officer, they took off. And again, property crime, we're not going to engage in a pursuit. Fortunately, we have a name of one of the persons involved, so we have enough there to follow up on the case, and hopefully it will lead to an arrest. But those are the situations that we are finding ourselves in more and more. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, Chief, I was going to ask, hopefully I'm not echoing too much. I was going to ask, so the new rule is you can detain juveniles?
No, you can detain them. You can't put them in detention, like the Hartford Detention Center.
Oh, they can't go to, okay.
So they would be, typically what happens when we and we don't really call them arrests, because they're not an arrest, they're really in a referral. We refer them to the juvenile court. And, but if there's a situation, say there's a shooting or a homicide or a robbery or something along those lines. So we detain the juvenile. If it's a minor crime, we issue them a juvenile summons, and, they'll go to juvenile court. So, breach of peace or assault third, or burglary, we'll issue them a summons and they go to juvenile court. Or if it's a real low-level crime, what we have in Newington, we call a juvenile review board, where it won't even go to juvenile court. We have a youth officer here, and basically we'll defer it to the juvenile review board. And it's made up of a group of people, police, human services, board of ed, And basically they appear before the Juvenile Review Board, and there's counseling, there's community service. So there's a whole host of things the Juvenile Review Board can do for low-level juvenile offenses. But when you start getting into the more serious ones, say it was a robbery, purse snatching, then we would make the apprehension, and then we would basically have to petition a judge to show that, yeah, we had probable cause to make the arrest, and based on the offense, this individual can't be managed in a less restrictive setting, and that taken to custody order would go before a judge. They would review it, review the facts of the case, and can decide, yes, that person can be put in juvenile detention, or no, it's being denied. And then that juvenile would be returned to the custody of his or her parents, or in some cases, the state agency that's responsible for their care.
Okay. Would you say with this new change that you're seeing, is there anything that's happening upstream that's also changed to that coincides with this?
As far as what, when you mean upstream?
Well, if this is, whereas before you were able to send somebody to detention and now you can't, is anything happening upstream that's preventing more people from coming down who should be going to detention, who are not now?
Well, I think it should be easier to put people, and I'm not saying that everybody should be in detention. So find another facility that isn't like juvenile detention, but where you just can't walk away, where
Right.
you're there, but you're getting services, you're being put in a position where you can't hurt yourself or hurt anybody else.
Right.
And it just seems like there's nothing in between now. It's either all or nothing. Either it's got to rise to a real serious crime to be put in detention, and if it doesn't, then you're just back out on the street, and that's not doing anybody any good. And my thing is, it's certainly not doing the juveniles any good.
Right.
And you got to find something in between. It just seems like it's just continuous, and and we can go back and we can talk about education and opportunity and employment. I mean, that's all interwoven, and it's a very complex issue where, yeah, you just can't talk about juvenile detention without looking at the bigger picture of what's driving some of these things. And but I just think there are kids that or certainly may not commit a real serious crime, but are beyond the control of their parents, beyond the control of the people that are responsible for their care. And if they continue to operate in the environment that they did, like this individual I just cited, there's going to be tragic results. And if there was something in place, who knows? That kid that got shot in the head in Hartford as a juvenile, maybe he would be here today. So that's how I look. I don't look at it as being punitive. I'm looking at it that what's in the best interest of the child, and being put in a facility or something that prevents them from harming themselves and operating in a dangerous environment or hurting others needs to be considered.
Yeah, agreed.
Does anybody else have any questions? It's a very complex issue. It's just, when you look at it, you can't just look at it piecemeal. You have to look at it holistically. And there's a lot of work you know, how do you get, I mean, I have a 2-year-old grandson. How do you look at a 2-year-old baby? It was just, and then, you know, 14, 15 years later, committing the crimes that they're committing. It's just, it's saddening. It is. And there's got to be a way to prevent that from happening. And, you know, it's complex, and it's going to take a lot of work, and it's probably going to take a whole lot of money. But, you know, I can tell you in my years of experience as a police officer, some of the best crime prevention strategies are really social, you know, social programs, after school programs, sports. I mean, you got to find a way to keep kids occupied. You got to find a way, you know, that they can get some discipline. And what's interesting, there's like 6 or 8 of us doing a 3-day seminar on use of force. And today was a great guest speaker. And as soon as I say who it is, you're going to know who it is. It was Marcus Luttrell. And everybody knows who he is from Lone Survivor. And he was a guest speaker. And he talked about, you know, first, he's a huge supporter of police officers. And he was drawing some correlations between his experience as a SEAL and what we're facing in law enforcement. But just to go back, he was talking about his upbringing, and, you know, basically saying, you know, my father wasn't my friend. My father was my father, and my father instilled in me with discipline and respect. It was those 2 things, and we don't see a lot of that anymore. And we got to find a way to return to that. And, you know, you can get to those kids in the inner cities with you know, sports, after school programs. You got to find a replacement for those parents that aren't there for their kids. There's plenty of good people, you know, coaches. I still remember my coaches growing up playing baseball. I remember them. So you got to find a replacement there, or we're just going to keep spinning our wheels. But very interesting. One of the other things he had talked about, you know, with the challenges that we're facing in law enforcement, and, you know, the challenges of being a SEAL. And, you know, when you become a SEAL, you make a commitment, and you're going to decide you're going to do it. And you know what? If you're not going to do it, then you leave. And that's where we are. That was a correlation he was talking about right now, where we are in law enforcement. Yeah, our challenges right now are immense, and you got to be committed to the job right now, probably more now than you ever been. And, you know, he said, as a SEAL, you can always, when you're in buds, you know, when it becomes too much for you, you know, you can leave. And it's the same in law enforcement. If it becomes too much for you, you can leave. And he says, as a SEAL, as a team, what do you have left? And he said, you have a great core group of operators, of SEALs. And he said, you're going to get the same thing with law enforcement. When people leave, in the end, you're going to have that good core group of officers. So that was a correlation he was trying to make. And I mean, he talked, and the guy's the most, I don't know if anybody's ever heard him talk. He's laid back, very articulate, you know, somebody that endured what he endured. And just the way he carried himself, the way he spoke, very impressive, very impressive. So I learned a number of things just in that short time listening to him, and it kind of gets you kind of energized and refocused again. And I think that's what they were trying to do with having him there, and, you know, good stuff. So, we have a problem, and it needs to be addressed. And, you know, it's going to take a lot of effort, but, you know, I've always said the best crime prevention strategies are really, you know, social programs. When you give people the opportunity, kids the opportunity, you know, they don't commit crimes, you know, you got to get to them before they get to that point. So like I said, you have a young baby, 2-year-old baby, 1-year-old baby, and you know, how do they get to that point where they're 14, 15 years old, and you know, they're breaking into cars, they're stealing cars, fleeing from the police, you know, carrying guns. We got to find a way to stop that. And it's during those, you know, developmental years that we need to put a lot of focus on. And it can be done. It's just going to take a lot of time and effort and resources. Anybody have any questions? Good. Okay, update in the Headlight Taillight program. We're good to go. So I don't know if you saw it on Facebook. I don't have Facebook, but that's getting implemented. We gave the vouchers to the sergeants. The sergeants are going to hand them out to the officers, and we'll get that started, right? You know, and the timing is good with the holidays, and then you know, people are hurting because of COVID. So I know someone said there was kind of like a shot across our bow, like it was going to be an excuse to pull people over. You know, don't get involved in that. That's not going to happen. This is with the best intention. This is to give people some assistance. It's really traffic safety with headlights out and people not having the resources or, you know, to fix that. This is you guys. You're the ones that you were the brains behind this, is to provide people with some assistance to get their car fixed, you know, so because of traffic safety. And when I brought that idea up to Dave Johnson, who owns the Geico in Newington, at a Rotary breakfast, I was talking about it with him, and he jumped all over it. He wanted to do it, you know, from the insurance, you know, perspective. So he's in support of it. Turnpike Motors in support of it. And, you know, just to go back to the car brakes, it just kind of put a thought in my head talking to Dave. I had asked him about, you know, how does this affect insurance rates when you have a spike in car brakes and stolen cars? You know, does it affect the community's insurance? And he said, absolutely. He said, the more claims there are in a given area, that's how the adjusters determine your insurance rates. So if there's a lot of car breaks and stolen cars, and the insurance companies are paying out because of that, you know, those adjusters look at that, and that's how your rates are determined. So, you know, the simple answer to that question is it does. So, you know, the more car breaks there are, it's going to affect everybody in Newington's insurance rates. You're going to pay a higher rate because of those breaks, because those statistics are used by the adjusters. So I had forgotten to mention that when I had talked about the stolen vehicles and the car thefts. So just talking about the headlights and talking to Dave kind of jogged my memory. So I thought that was important. So, you know, good stuff. That's starting. I'll let you know. You know, I'll send you some emails, you know, how many are out there. And we'll see how the donation money goes, how long it lasts. But hopefully people will take advantage of it. And, you know, we put the information out today. I followed up with another email saying, you know, this isn't for the person that's driving a $40,000, you know, BMW, Audi. You know, this is for folks that, you know, need assistance. And, you know, if you see them in a parking lot, you know, at an accident, or, you know, under a consensual situation, and, you know, they have a broken taillight or a headlight out, you know, give them the voucher, and we can make arrangements to have, you know, it fixed. And you guys saw a copy of the voucher, right? With the logos on it. It came out really good. It came out.
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah, and I like Jamie's caption. You caught a break, light, parentheses.
Super cute.
Yeah, it came out good. So I'll keep you I'll keep you up to date about that. And then what else? That's basically it. I know it was kind of a short meeting. One of the things that we've lost some folks, so we're going to need to try to get our numbers back up. We were down to 8, and now we're down to 7. I'd like to get up to 10 or 12. So that's something that we need to discuss. If you have any ideas, feel free to shoot me an email. But I think we need to get our numbers up. You know, people have moved out of town. We've lost 2 recently, with Ken moving to the Carolinas and now AJ moving out of town. So any input on that you could provide, feel free. Just, you know, do a all copied email. Okay. Does anybody have any questions on the Headlight? Good.
No, how many vouchers have they given out at this point?
We haven't given them out yet, Todd. We're going to start tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we just started it today, and I don't know if we posted it on Facebook, so the word will get out. So Jamie's going to keep track of all that. So when the vouchers get handed out, they'll contact her, and then she makes the arrangements with Turnpike Motors to have the light fixed.
What was the reaction on Facebook?
It was good, but there was one, I guess, where thought there was suspicious motives, I guess. We'll put it that way. Like,
Yeah.
You know, did we get a legal review of, you know, stopping people and police discretion? And to be honest with you, you know, let's face it, it's being done with the best intention. This is to help people. This is to, you know, rummage through somebody's car.
Right.
You know, so this is to help folks out during a real difficult time with COVID and people losing their jobs and things of that nature for traffic safety. And it's in full support of, you know, 2 Newington businesses. And you guys were the brains behind this whole thing, because this was your idea. And we, you know, as a police department, are riding your coattails, so to speak.
Yeah.
So
I'm very glad that I
this is
mentioned
all
it.
you. What's that?
I'm very glad that I mentioned it. It's been on
You
my
did.
mind for a long time, so
Yeah,
I'm very glad.
yeah, and you know, it's
Yeah,
nice we got
thanks,
it
man.
off the ground. Oh, there's one other thing, and I don't know if this came from one of you guys, or if it came from one of the people that during public comment, we started posting our general orders policies on our website. So if you go to programs and services, you click on that, and then click on community outreach, you'll see something for general orders. If you click on that, there's like 9 loaded. We're loading the ones where we think people would have, you know, the most interest in, and that's like, you know, use of force, tasers, IA investigations, hate crimes, racial profiling, those issues that are really at the forefront. Now we posted, the intent is to get them all posted. There's going to be some where we're not going to be able to post some of them because of tactics that we don't want out in public, but for the most part, and don't forget, there's like 120 general orders. There's a lot. So we're going to start getting those posted. We're going to put one up on our crisis intervention team. I just changed it because we had some phone numbers on there of personnel. I just took those out. So we're going to put that up. So we'll start loading those up there. So, you know, if people want to take a look at them and see what our policies are all about. You know, and don't forget, those are, you know, police policies are living documents. They're not static. We review them. We change them. You know, don't forget the laws change, you know, and, you know, the law drives policy. So as the law changes, we have to change our policies so they work in concert with the law. So, you know, they're ever changing. So we review them and then we'll make the necessary changes, for, in accordance with best police practice in the changes in the law. But we're going to start getting those posted up there. So, if you want to check out the website and look at them, they're there. Again, it's under program and services. Click on community outreach, and then you'll see, general orders, and you just click on those. There's like 9 of them up, but we'll start adding more to it, and you can start clicking on them and start reviewing them.
It's the Newington Police Department homepage.
It's if you go on the town webpage and then you go to departments and just click on police.
Okay.
And that brings you to our webpage. Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Is that you, James, doing that? You're good. All right, so click on programs and services. Community outreach. Department policies, go down right there. There you go. So we got law enforcement agency role, use of force, tasers, dealing with transgender individuals, racial profiling, domestic violence, investigation of hate crimes, internal affairs, and yours truly, Police Community Council. So we'll start adding more to those. Like I said, we have 120 of them. Some of them we're not going to put up because obviously there's some tactics involved that we don't want the public to be aware of. But, the vast majority we'll put up. And, it also shows people how extensive our policies are. I mean, there's a lot. So,
Is this the policy is how it's handled or how it's viewed by the police department?
These policies are specific to guide the police department.
Got it. Okay.
And then some of them, Todd, are mandated. And actually, some of the mandated policies aren't written by us. They're actually written by Post, which is down at the police academy. So like use of force is written by Post. Domestic violence is written by Post. Internal affairs is written by Post. So there's certain mandated policies at the state level that are actually written by Post. Another one is the body cams and in-car cameras. We don't have body cams yet. We're working on that. We're in the process of working with our vendor for our in-car cameras to use their body cams. So we have our in-car cameras that we've had for a while. So we have a policy on in-car cameras. So when we go up and running with the body cams, we'll use Post policies on the body cams.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Is there any update for the body cams on, I understand, they're mandated now under the police accountability bill, but the funding is only going to be 30%. How are you going to?
Yeah. So they mandated body cams for all police officers, mandated in-car cameras for all patrol vehicles. So we have 12 in-car cameras now. So we're going to need to buy some more. So we're in a process of we did some review. So we selected a vendor. So we're looking at about $500,000 between the body cams and the in-car cameras. So that's about $500,000, and that's for everything. That's for the body cams. We have the 12. We're going to start replacing the in-car cameras because they're starting to reach their service life. So we have to replace all of those. That's the infrastructure, the annual maintenance cost. So all that is factored in. We've worked with IT. So we're about $500,000 for that.
Would that
And
include,
then the state is going to reimburse the town 30%.
Okay.
So we'll get 30% reimbursement for the $500,000.
We hope.
We hope. Yeah.
does that body camera program, would that involve any kind of additional staffing? Would you have anybody on staff to handle that? Or is it gonna be contract?
You're right on. Yeah, we're gonna need somebody to manage it. And with just the number of requests for in-car camera footage,
Mhm.
now that we have the body cams, the number of requests that we're gonna get is gonna be huge. So we're gonna need somebody who's gonna be able to monitor that. You're gonna have to provide that information. You're gonna have to redact some of those that we're gonna have to redact because of issues related to victims, confidentiality, domestic violence. So we're gonna need a redaction software to go with it.
Mhm.
And, for me, as a supervisor, and just to give you an idea, if we have an incident where an officer uses force and it's captured on a body camera, and just say for the sake of discussion, there's 4 officers there with their body cameras, and anyone that uses force, so it could be one incident, but everyone that uses any level of force has to complete a use of force report. So if you have somebody that's resisting being handcuffed and it takes 3 officers, which it does, if somebody doesn't want to be handcuffed, it takes 3 officers to get that person handcuffed. Now everybody has to complete a use of force report. And as a supervisor, there's a review process. So I'm not going to sign off on a use of force report until I look at the body cam. And that's going to be the footage from 3 officers. So there's going to be a lot of time and effort. I don't think people, they don't understand that. So, if I'm the lieutenant that's in charge of reviewing that use of force incident, I'm going to have the reports, and I'm going to review the reports, and then I'm going to watch each officer's body cam in its entirety before I sign off on the report. And that's going to take up a lot of time. Not to mention, you're going to have defense attorneys, the court, they're always looking for footage. You're going to have to flag stuff. If we think something's going to become an issue, you have to flag that incident. I mean, it's going to take a lot of work and a lot of effort. I don't think people realize that. So Mary, your question about an additional person is spot on because of that.
Are you given direction on how to implement these things, or is it a lot of, this is what you need now, and figure out how to incorporate it into the department?
Yeah, I mean, because we already have the in-car cameras with mobile vision. So what I want to do is I want to use the body cams that work in concert with the in-car cameras. So you'll get, so say you have 2 officers or 3 officers at a scene. It's all capturing. You're going to have video from 3 cars and 3 officers. So you're going to capture a wide area of video.
Right.
And what's good about the mobile vision body cams is you don't have to turn it off, turn it on separately. Like when you activate the lights, it automatically triggers the in-car camera and will automatically trigger your body cam. So there's certain times where, the in-car camera along with the body camera will be automatically triggered. You won't have to think about it. You can always activate it on your own. But I'll give you an example. At one of the incidents that we reviewed today at that symposium was down in Florida. Officer involved shooting, party had the gun, and this car didn't have an in-car camera. He had a body cam, and he was so focused on the suspect that he forgot to turn his body cam on. So he gets out and then gets involved in a shooting, and realize, you can literally see he's involved in a shooting, realize he didn't activate his body cam. he takes his hand off the gun and starts shooting one-handed to activate his body cam. So, with the mobile vision, it's just, it under stress, when you're locked in under stress, you may forget that it's not second nature. At least with the mobile vision and the body cams being incorporated with the in-car cameras, you hit that lights, everything goes on, activates the car cam, activates the body cam.
Mhm.
You'll pull the patrol rifle out of the car, automatically activates the in-car camera, automatically activates the body cam. So one of the reasons I want to go with the mobile vision body cams is because it's married to the in-car camera. And but just so you know too, though, there's always, so when you activate the body cam or the in-car camera, there's a period of time up to that is recorded. There's no audio, but it still gets recorded. So it's 30 seconds or 60 seconds before you activate, it will record. You just won't get the audio. And that's what happened in this situation where that we were talking about today at the symposium. The video was there, but there was no audio. And the audio is important. The audio is just as important as the video. So, but once we bring that online, we can talk about it. And more importantly, once this COVID thing is done, you guys can come down here. We'll have a meeting, and we can set it all up for you so you have an idea how this whole thing works. But I like the car and the body cam being married together because you can capture a lot more. But when this is all said and done, you can come down, we'll set the car up, and you can see how everything works and have a better idea. But and believe me, I the body cams are going to be good. For us, I think they're going to be good. It's going to provide the residents and anybody that's looking with information that they want. It's going to show that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing.
Mhm.
I think it's good. I think one of the things that we've been as a profession that we need to do is capture more data. I think we capture some data, but I think we got to do a better job at capturing even more data. You got to really you can superficially get data, but you really need to drill down. And that's one of the things that we're seeing with this symposium that we're doing. And I had mentioned to one of the officers that is taking the class that when this is all said and done, the last day is actually tomorrow. The group of us are going to get together and talk about what we learned, what we saw, and how we can apply that here and make our systems better. So that's the game plan. But more data is good. I think it helps us. The body cams is going to help us. It's all going to work in our favor. So, but when when this whole thing's done, we'll set something up, and you guys can come down and take a look at it. Hopefully within next 6-7 months we can get it going. But the problem is everybody's rushing now. Everybody's trying to buy it. So
Is the symposium the same thing you've been doing since 2016, sending the information from the police department to, I'm trying to think of what the program was that you had been a part of or joined early on.
Oh, the Center for Policing Equity?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah, this has nothing to do with that. This is just the use of force symposium, talking about different classes, different issues. And actually, it's funny you say that. The Center for Policing Equity, I got a phone call today, so they're getting close to completion of the report. They're actually, I got some sort of software that I got to load on my computer that I got to get permission from IT to do. where they're going to send me the report. We can start reviewing it and start discussing it to make it more, in line with what's going on here locally. So, but they're getting close, very close. So, but this, the use of force symposium it's a training session. It's a 3-day training session. Typically, we would send people they usually have it done at Mohegan Sun for 3 days. But because of COVID, they're doing it virtual. So because it's virtual, I'm taking it too, because I can learn a lot. And it's nice to see what, the officers are learning at the staff level and, at the officer level. So I'm watching it and answering my phone at the same time and answering emails. So kind of doing 3 things at once, but
Nice.
it's good, very beneficial.
I have a question on the footage from the vehicles and the body cam. Is that going to be like FOIA? Is it going to be that easily accessible by the public, or is it going to have to be
It's
through
a public
lawyer?
document. Sure.
Wow.
Yeah,
You're going to get a lot of requests.
Yeah,
Frivolous, probably.
Yeah,
Some of it will be frivolous.
it's a public document. I mean, it's freedom of information. Video is a public document.
Wow.
Granted, there's some restrictions there because of, medicals and domestic violence and victims and things like that. But that's why we need redaction software. Because there's certain times we're going to have to redact people's identity. But yeah, it's a good point, Gail. It's freedom of information. It's a public record. Public has access to it. It's nothing to prevent me from, I see 3 cops at my neighbor's house.
Exactly.
And I want to know what's going on. I can go down to the police department and say, here's my FOI request. I want any and all documents, reports, and video footage, audio footage of the incident that occurred at my neighbor's house. It can happen.
It could end up on Facebook too, probably.
Once we provide that, there's,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not an FOI lawyer, but I would say once we have to honor the request under the law. So once we provide that, what people do with it is beyond our control. But legally, if it's a public record, we have to provide them. And James, our town clerk, is probably listening in, and he knows FOI better than I do. But if it's a public document, we have to provide them with that information. We can't withhold it. We can redact certain things, but it's public record. It's theirs. And what they do with it, they do with it.
Yeah, I've gotten that question before, and I've actually spoke to the information officer, and he said, you give them the information, but what they do with it, it's on them. They can put it wherever they want. They can share it however they want. So yeah, that does open up a lot of concerns.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. All right, James, we'll open it up to public comment if anybody's out there that has a question or wants to add something.
Go ahead and state your name and address for the record, and then you're free to speak.
Sean Vivier, 21 Rosewood Drive. First off, I want to thank you for all the added context you've given for the car thefts. It really helped out. I do have 2 questions about the policy to not pursue when it's a non-violent property crime, just to help me understand the risk reward calculation. First is, you had mentioned earlier, there was a case where someone sped off, but you were still able to find them later. How often are you able to do something like that? And the second question is, do we have any kind of statistics about any injuries or crashes that were caused by chases before this policy was put into place?
Yeah, I'll answer your first question. It's rare. I mean, when people take off, it's, most of the cars are stolen. It's not like you can get the license plate, run the license plate, and it comes back to the registered owner. A lot of these cars that flee are one, they're stolen, or the plates that are on the car is a misuse. So the car is unregistered, uninsured, misuse. So in regards to apprehending them, no, it doesn't happen too often. Now the policy of it's, and again, this is we'll put the pursuit policy up on the website as well, so you can take a look at it. And again, that is a state mandated policy. Policy isn't written by me, it's written by Post because it's a mandated state policy. And over the years, there's been police pursuits where innocent civilians have been seriously injured or killed because of a vehicle fleeing. And I mean, if you just Google police pursuit accident, and I think you would come across a lot of information about the dangers of police pursuits. When I first started in 85, it was a different time. We pursued vehicles, stolen cars. I remember chasing a car from the old Caldors, which is Stu Leonard's now, chased it up the Berlin Turnpike and all the way to 91 in front of the Colt building. But over the years, people have been seriously injured or killed as a result of police pursuits. And it's kind of a balance, what does letting the suspect flee and get away? Is there more risk of letting the offender get away or continuing to pursue? And they're dangerous. There's no question about it. Police pursuits are dangerous, and there's a tremendous amount of risk there. And it's an innocent person getting killed. I can remember I had it. I'll bring up another experience, the old hit or miss on the Berlin Turnpike. We had a shoplifting in a stolen van, and I was a sergeant at the time, and two officers chased it, and it got to Cedar in Maine, and I saw it coming, and I was a sergeant, and here it was, and I jumped onto it, and with the three officers behind me, chased it down Main Street, made a right onto Hartford Avenue, and took a right onto Frank Street. And when it took a right on the Frank Street, the driver was a male and a female, almost lost it and almost took out a young woman standing on a street corner with her 6-year-old daughter. And I cut the chase down, and then right after that, for some reason, he just stopped and he bailed out of the car, and the female passenger stayed in the car, and I grabbed her. But I mean, it just goes to show you, one, by feet, missed this poor woman and her child. So that just gives you an idea how dangerous these pursuits are. And over the years, there's been some tragic consequences because of police pursuits. So they're very restrictive. And I mean, think of your own family, right. Driving down the road one day and, car is fleeing and the police are chasing it, and it crashes into your family's car and takes your loved one. That's not something I would want on my conscience, but because of those restrictions, everybody knows the limitations when the police will pursue and they're using it. And like I said earlier, it is happening much more frequently where cars are just taking off. We had one yesterday where the officer walked up to the car and the car took off up Main Street. And then we had one this morning that was involved in a larceny up in the north end of town during the midnight hours. They traced the car and they took off, or pickup truck. So, but yeah, it's frustrating, but you get a chance, just Google police pursuits, accidents, and you'll see why. And there's been a tremendous amount of lawsuits because of that as well, where towns have paid out a lot of money as a result of a pursuit that's gone bad. So, in the interest of public safety and liability to the town, pursuits are very restrictive, and they don't occur that often. If it's something serious, they're okay. They're okay to pursue, but they're also given the same discretion. You can pursue, but you can also, disengage.
Okay.
But they're dangerous, and because of that, they're restricted.
All right, that all makes a lot of sense, and thank you for your efforts with what you're allowed to do.
Anybody else? Jim? James?
Doesn't look like it unless Mr. Camillo would like to speak. I'd say that's all your public for tonight.
Okay, great, thanks. Anybody else? You guys have anything you want to add? Any concerns? Anything that you're seeing? Anything that you're hearing? You're my eyes and ears. You have anything? No?
Nothing that I'm hearing. I'm excited to see what happens with now that the vouchers are going to be going out
Yeah,
in terms of community interaction and handing them out and seeing just how it
yeah,
plays out.
yeah. And I'll keep you guys updated on that. I'll send you an email, and then the next meeting we could talk about it again. So you have some of the results of how well it's working, and if we need to tweak it. But yeah, we're excited, and it's something good, which is especially during the holidays and during COVID when people are struggling. So with that,
I actually have one thing, just a quick
sure,
question.
Mary.
About the stuff a cruiser. I know it's a little different this year. I saw something just before I signed into this meeting. Do you have any updates on that? I know it was different this year because you didn't get to have it
Yeah,
at the store.
because of COVID, they were taking, and I feel sorry for Human Services. I mean, normally we have the big event up at Walmart, and we're not able to do that. But Jamie's been trying to do make some revisions to the program, and mostly collecting gift cards. So they've been using gift cards, and we have a receptacle here at the PD. So if anybody wants to drop something off, feel free. But yeah, it's limited. I'll be glad when this COVID thing is over, in a lot of different ways. I'm like ready. I'm like walking around with my arm out, like I want my shot so I can get through this thing. Thanksgiving was kind of like a skeleton Thanksgiving, and it's just hard. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, you know what? When this whole thing is done, hopefully by August we'll be able to do National Night Out. Next year Stuff a Cruiser. There's other things that we're gonna do. So hopefully, by late spring, early summer, the COVID is in a situation where we can all get back together again. And, when that happens, it will make it even more fun and meaningful because we've been away from each other and cooped up. So that's what I'm looking forward to. And I'm looking forward to having meetings face to face and not in front of a computer. So we'll work on that, but just know that better days are here to come. It's just a matter of time. Sounds like we're getting close, but don't let your guard down. Like I said earlier, we've had almost 1,000 people in Newington that have tested positive, and another 72 that are passed away that aren't here for the holidays with their family. So, stay diligent. I know we're doing it. Personally, I'm doing it. The last thing I want to do is we're getting close to the vaccine is catch it. So if I got to stay cooped up in my house for another month or two, I'm going to do it because I don't want to put my family at risk.
100%.
Yeah. Okay, with that, it was good to see you. And if you need anything, feel free to give me a call or to send me an email. Okay. All right,
Awesome.
thanks, everyone.
Good night.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Night.
Yeah, thank you.
Good
You
night.
bet.
Bye, everybody.
Good, James?